Kim Jong-un is one of the scariest men alive, but do you know he has some of the world's most unusual secret hobbies? From obsessive basketball gaming marathons that border on unhealthy, to million-dollar cheese binges that landed him in the hospital, in this video we're exposing the jaw-dropping pastimes of North Korea's most feared leader. Obsessive video game sessions and basketball simulations. Deep within the secretive compounds of Pyongyang lies perhaps one of the most unexpected sanctuaries in the world, Kim Jong-un's private gaming paradise. Far from the image of a calculating dictator behind closed doors, the supreme leader transforms into something that might surprise you, an obsessive gamer who can spend countless hours lost in virtual worlds, particularly those involving his greatest passion, basketball. The roots of this obsession trace back to his formative years in Switzerland, where young Kim Jong-un, attending school under the pseudonym Pakun, first encountered the intoxicating world of Western entertainment. It was here, thousands of miles from the oppressive atmosphere of North Korea, that he discovered two things that would define his adult life: an unbridled love for basketball, particularly Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, and an almost addictive relationship with video games. Classmates from his Swiss school days remember him as completely obsessed with computer games, often skipping classes to engage in marathon gaming sessions. But this wasn't casual entertainment. This was the behavior of someone who had found an escape from reality so compelling that it bordered on compulsion. He would spend hours creating meticulous pencil drawings of Michael Jordan, studying every move, every gesture, every triumph of his basketball hero. Fast forward to today, and defectors report that Kim has constructed an elaborate private gaming room stocked with imported PlayStation consoles, avoiding real court basketball play due to his significant weight gain, now estimated at around 300 pounds. Instead, he channels his basketball obsession through NBA simulation games, where he can live out fantasies of athletic greatness without the physical demands of actual sport. The irony is almost theatrical. Here's a man who rules over one of the world's most isolated nations, yet he spends his private hours immersed in American basketball culture through Japanese gaming technology. Stories from the inner circle suggest he once flew into such a rage during a gaming session that he destroyed a controller, a tantrum that speaks to both his competitive nature and the intense emotional investment he places in these virtual experiences. What makes this hobby particularly fascinating is how it represents a form of cultural rebellion within his own regime. While North Korea strictly controls and often bans foreign cultural influences, Kim Jong-un's gaming habits represent a direct contradiction to his government's policies. He's essentially engaging in the very Western cultural consumption that his regime condemns for ordinary citizens. Recent developments have shown this interest extending beyond personal indulgence, as Kim visited a new 300-seat video game house in Pyongyang in April 2025, expressing enthusiasm about making gaming more accessible to North Korean youth. This public embrace of gaming culture suggests that his private obsession may be influencing national policy, creating a surreal situation where a dictator's personal hobbies become state initiatives. Up next, in what might be one of the most bizarre ironies of the modern digital age, the supreme leader of North Korea, a man who commands one of the world's most militarized societies and regularly threatens nuclear war, reportedly unwinds by playing online military simulation games alongside ordinary gamers from around the globe. Playing military simulator games like War Thunder. This isn't just any casual gaming habit. Intelligence circles and online forums have persistently suggested that Kim Jong-un is an avid player of War Thunder, a multiplayer game simulating World War II-era battles with tanks and planes. The implications of this rumored hobby are staggering when you really think about it. Here's a man who spends his days orchestrating real military demonstrations, supervising nuclear weapons development, and making threats that could potentially trigger global conflict. Yet his idea of relaxation involves virtual warfare using vintage military equipment from conflicts that ended decades before his birth. The speculation gained particular traction due to Steam's global user map showing a single active user in North Korea, often pinpointed to Pyongyang. While this could theoretically belong to any number of people with special access, given Kim Jong-un's well-documented gaming obsessions from his youth and his regime's tight control over internet access, many believe this lone digital footprint belongs to the supreme leader himself. What makes this particularly fascinating is the cultural psychology at play. During his Swiss education, Kim was described as obsessed with computer games, particularly strategy titles like Warcraft, where he reportedly spent hours and even modified game levels through hacking. This early exposure to military strategy games may have shaped not just his recreational preferences, but potentially his approach to real-world military thinking. The choice of War Thunder specifically is intriguing because it focuses on historical military vehicles and battles, not modern warfare. There's something almost escapist about a contemporary dictator choosing to engage with the romanticized machinery of past conflicts, rather than simulations of current military technology. It suggests a nostalgic appreciation for military hardware and tactics divorced from the immediate pressures of his real-world responsibilities. In 2020, state media documented Kim cautiously examining a combat flight simulator at a Pyongyang arcade, where he instructed workers to replace English warning signs with Korean equivalents. This rare glimpse into his hands-on engagement with military simulation technology suggests that his interest extends beyond mere entertainment into a genuine fascination with the mechanics of warfare. The online gaming aspect adds another layer of surreal complexity. If the rumors are true, Kim Jong-un could be regularly interacting with players from countries he officially considers enemies: Americans, South Koreans, Japanese gamers, all while maintaining his anonymous digital identity. Social media speculation often jokes about the possibility that you could be gaming with Kim Jong-un right now and not know it, highlighting the absurdist nature of modern digital connectivity. Perhaps most tellingly, this hobby aligns with North Korea's broader development of domestic military-themed games and simulations, suggesting that Kim's personal interests may be influencing state propaganda and entertainment initiatives. The line between his private gaming habits and official state business becomes increasingly blurred, creating a unique situation where a dictator's leisure activities potentially shape national cultural production. Up next, behind the stern facade of nuclear threats and authoritarian rule lies perhaps the most humanizing and unexpected aspect of Kim Jong-un's private life: a deeply sentimental attachment to Disney animated films that borders on the obsessive. Secret Disney and animated film binge-watching. This isn't just casual movie watching. Defectors and intelligence reports suggest he has created elaborate private screening rooms where he regularly binges on Disney classics, often watching the same films repeatedly in a way that speaks to both nostalgia and psychological comfort-seeking. The origins of this fascination trace back to his privileged childhood, where Disney films were reportedly the only Western media permitted in North Korea under his father's rule, aside from Soviet propaganda. This selective cultural exposure created a unique psychological landscape where animated fantasy became Kim Jong-un's primary window into Western creativity and storytelling traditions. The most public glimpse of this obsession came in July 2012, shortly after Kim Jong-un's ascension to power, when North Korean state television broadcast a concert featuring performers in unauthorized Disney character costumes. The surreal spectacle showed Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Winnie the Pooh, and Tigger prancing before Kim and other officials, while the Moranbong Band performed Disney melodies alongside North Korean propaganda songs. The international attention this received was immediate and overwhelming, with Disney quickly condemning the unauthorized use of their intellectual property. But this public display was merely the tip of the iceberg. Defectors report that Kim maintains private collections of Disney films, particularly classics like Dumbo and Snow White, which he screens in hidden villas. These aren't casual viewings, but dedicated binge-watching sessions that represent a form of emotional regression, a powerful man seeking comfort in the innocent fantasy worlds he discovered during his isolated youth. The psychological implications are profound when you consider that these animated films offered young Kim Jong-un a form of escapism during a childhood marked by family purges and the constant pressure of dynastic expectations. Anna Fifield, a renowned analyst, notes how this humanizes his isolated upbringing, where cartoons provided emotional refuge amid the violence and paranoia that defined his family's rule. The method of acquisition adds another layer of intrigue to this hobby. These films are obtained through bootleg copies smuggled via diplomatic channels, creating a complex network of cultural contraband that exists solely to feed the supreme leader's animation appetite. The irony is stark. While ordinary North Koreans face severe punishment for consuming foreign media, their leader not only watches it freely, but has essentially institutionalized its smuggling. What makes this hobby particularly fascinating is how it contrasts with Kim Jong-un's public persona. Here's a man who regularly threatens to unleash nuclear devastation upon the world, yet privately seeks solace in stories about flying elephants and singing dwarfs. The family history adds depth to this contradiction. Secret visits to Disney parks using fake passports, including documented trips to Disneyland Paris during his youth. Recent developments show this influence extending into state policy, with reports of North Korean schools using Disney animations to teach English, despite official anti-Western rhetoric. This suggests that Kim Jong-un's private obsessions may be quietly reshaping educational approaches within his own country, creating yet another layer of contradiction between public ideology and private influence. indulgence. For our next entry, in what might be the most peculiar and physiologically damaging of all Kim Jong-un's secret indulgences, the Supreme Leader has reportedly developed what can only be described as an addiction to Swiss Emmental cheese, the same nutty, hole-filled delicacy he first encountered during his transformative teenage years in Switzerland. Gorging on Swiss Emmental cheese imports? This isn't merely a preference or occasional craving. Multiple intelligence sources and defector accounts describe an obsessive consumption pattern that has allegedly contributed to dramatic weight gain and serious health complications. The story reaches its most dramatic chapter during Kim Jong-un's mysterious 6-week disappearance from public view in September 2014. South Korean intelligence agencies linked this absence to a severe gout attack, a painful joint condition that medical experts directly attributed to his excessive consumption of rich foods, particularly his reported Emmental cheese binges. The image of a nuclear-armed dictator being incapacitated by cheese consumption is both absurd and deeply revealing about the self-destructive nature of unchecked power and privilege. According to defector testimonies and intelligence reports, Kim Jong-un imports vast quantities of Emmental cheese through elaborate sanctions-busting networks, despite international restrictions designed to limit luxury imports to North Korea. The logistics alone are staggering. Tons of cheese annually smuggled through Chinese intermediaries and diplomatic channels, all to satisfy one man's craving for a food product that holds deep psychological significance from his formative years abroad. The Swiss connection adds profound psychological depth to this indulgence. During his time at schools in Bern and Konitz, young Kim Jong-un was exposed to European culinary traditions that represented freedom, normalcy, and acceptance, emotions that stand in stark contrast to the isolated, paranoid environment of the North Korean elite. Emmental cheese, in particular, became associated with some of the happiest and most liberated moments of his youth, making his adult consumption a form of edible nostalgia that temporarily transports him back to those carefree days in Switzerland. The scale of this indulgence is breathtaking when you consider that Kim Jong-un allegedly attempted to establish domestic cheese production by sending delegates to France's Institut National Supérieur des Sciences Agronomiques de l'Alimentation et de l'Environnement for specialized training. When this request was rejected, efforts to replicate Emmental-style cheese at Pyongyang dairy facilities reportedly failed due to quality control issues, forcing continued reliance on expensive imports. The health consequences of this obsession have become increasingly apparent over the years. Medical experts estimate that Kim Jong-un has gained between 90 and 100 pounds since taking power in 2011, with his Emmental addiction cited as a major contributing factor. The irony is devastating when you consider that this weight gain, partly driven by nostalgic cheese consumption, occurs in a country where millions face chronic malnutrition and food insecurity. The smuggling operations required to maintain this habit reveal the extensive criminal networks that support elite North Korean lifestyles. Reports suggest that Kim Jong-un's cheese imports are coordinated through the same channels used to import cognac, caviar, and other luxury items, creating a vast underground economy dedicated to satisfying the appetites of a single individual while his population struggles with basic nutrition. Perhaps most tragically, this cheese addiction represents a form of emotional self-medication that highlights the psychological toll of absolute power. The compulsive consumption of Emmental cheese appears to be Kim Jong-un's way of accessing memories of genuine happiness and normalcy from his youth, a time before the crushing weight of dynastic responsibility, international isolation, and the constant threat of internal and external enemies. For our next entry, deep within the marble halls of Kim Jong-un's numerous palaces, lies perhaps the most elaborate and morally complex of all his secret hobbies: the orchestration of impossibly extravagant dining experiences that transform eating from mere sustenance into theatrical performances of global culinary conquest. Curating exotic sanction-busting fine dining feasts. These aren't simply meals, they're carefully curated expeditions through the world's most exclusive and forbidden delicacies, each feast representing a triumph over international sanctions and a monument to elite privilege in one of the world's hungriest nations. Intelligence estimates suggest that Kim Jong-un spends between $650 and $700 million annually on luxury imports, with a significant portion dedicated to procuring ingredients that would challenge the imagination of even the most sophisticated international gourmands. We're talking about Kobe steaks that cost more than most North Koreans earn in a year, caviar harvested from endangered sturgeon, lobsters flown in from Maine, and shark fin soup whose preparation involves the systematic destruction of marine ecosystems. The psychological drivers behind this obsession trace back to his father's legendary Epicurean habits. Kim Jong-il was notorious for importing luxuries like crystal champagne and shark fin soup, even during periods of severe national famine, establishing a family tradition where culinary excess became a form of political statement and personal rebellion against the constraints of international isolation. But Kim Jong-un has elevated this tradition to unprecedented levels of sophistication and scale. His former sushi chef, Kenji Fujimoto, revealed details of elaborate dining experiences involving imported chefs, rare seafood, and wine collections worth millions. These aren't just expensive meals, they're immersive cultural experiences where Kim Jong-un can virtually travel the world through cuisine, experiencing flavors and techniques from countries he can never visit due to his international pariah status. The 2018 Inter-Korean Summit dinner provides a rare public glimpse into the sophistication of these culinary productions. The menu included chilled octopus, sea cucumber, premium cod, wagyu beef, sea bream, steamed crab, Swiss rosti, grilled John Dory, bibimbap, cold noodles, and mango mousse, each dish representing not just flavor but diplomatic strategy and cultural messaging. The logistics of these feasts reveal a shadow economy of staggering complexity. North Korea operates illicit procurement networks spanning up to 90 countries, utilizing diplomatic pouches, shell companies, and criminal intermediaries to acquire ingredients that should be impossible to obtain under international sanctions. Brazilian coffee costing $500 per pound, Parma ham aged in Italian caves, premium Bordeaux wines, all flowing into Pyongyang to satisfy one man's culinary ambitions. The regime's Long Life Research Institute represents perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this hobby, tasked with sourcing medicinal delicacies believed to extend Kim Jong-un's life and enhance his vitality. This pseudo-scientific approach to cuisine transforms eating into a form of magical thinking, where rare ingredients become talismans against mortality and political vulnerability. Recent developments show the global reach of these operations continuing to expand. In 2025, reports emerged of North Korea's secret wine trade, with Kim Jong-un identified as a major buyer of premium vintages, while 2024 data revealed $50 million in high-end imports designated as gifts for regime officials. The moral complexity of this hobby becomes most apparent when contrasted with the reality of North Korean food security. While Kim Jong-un orchestrates million-dollar feasts, over 10 million of his citizens face chronic malnutrition, creating a grotesque disparity that transforms each gourmet meal into a statement about power, privilege, and the fundamental inequality that defines authoritarian rule. Up next in the private screening rooms of Kim Jong-un's palatial compounds, a very different kind of state theater unfolds nightly, one where the supreme leader of North Korea transforms from nuclear-armed dictator into devoted cinephile, immersing himself in the very Western action cinema that his regime officially condemns as cultural poison. Collecting and watching bootleg action movies. This isn't casual movie watching. Intelligence sources and defector accounts describe an extensive, carefully curated collection of bootleg action films that rivals any serious film archive, representing decades of systematic cultural contraband smuggling. The psychological foundation for this obsession was laid during Kim Jong-un's transformative adolescence in Switzerland, where classmates remember him as completely absorbed by action movies starring Jackie Chan and fascinated by the James Bond franchise. But this wasn't typical teenage entertainment consumption. It was the beginning of a lifelong love affair with Western action cinema that would become both personal obsession and political contradiction. The inheritance aspect adds profound depth to this hobby. Kim Jong-il, his father, amassed a legendary collection of 30,000 films, including bootlegged copies of Rambo, Friday the 13th, Hong Kong action flicks, and Mel Gibson movies. This vast archive represented one of the world's most comprehensive collections of illicit cinema, maintained by a man who simultaneously banned foreign films for his citizens and executed people for distributing the very entertainment he consumed nightly. Kim Jong-il's collection included the complete James Bond series, numerous action blockbusters, and martial arts films, all smuggled through diplomatic channels and criminal networks. He would often stay up late watching these films, transforming the isolation of absolute power into private film festivals where he could experience vicarious adventures and emotional experiences unavailable in his real life. Kim Jong-un has not only inherited this collection but has likely expanded expanded it dramatically. The acquisition methods reveal a sophisticated understanding of global entertainment distribution networks. Films are smuggled via USBs, DVDs, and diplomatic pouches, often traded in black markets despite the death penalty that ordinary citizens face for similar activities. The Supreme Leader essentially operates his own private piracy network, protected by the same system that would execute his citizens for identical behavior. The Jackie Chan preference is particularly revealing psychologically. Chan's films typically feature themes of individual heroism, clever problem-solving, and triumph over seemingly impossible odds, themes that might resonate with someone navigating the complex challenges of authoritarian rule while maintaining international relevance. The 2018 incident where President Trump showed Kim Jong-un a fake action movie trailer reportedly resonated strongly with him, highlighting how deeply this cinematic language has shaped his worldview and communication preferences. The hypocrisy reaches its most extreme expression in the regime's treatment of film distribution. In 2021, Kim Jong-un ordered the public execution of a man for selling South Korean bootleg films, while simultaneously maintaining his own massive archive of Western cinema. This creates a perverse situation where cultural consumption becomes a privilege of absolute power, and the same activities that define the leader's personal life become capital offenses for ordinary citizens. The influence of this hobby extends into state propaganda production. Recent North Korean propaganda videos show clear influences from Western action filmmaking, including a 2022 missile launch video that mimicked the style of Top Gun and Terminator. This suggests that Kim Jong-un's private film consumption is directly shaping official state messaging, creating a unique feedback loop where bootleg entertainment influences government propaganda. Against the dramatic backdrop of Mount Paektu, North Korea's highest and most sacred peak, Kim Jong-un has cultivated what appears to be both a genuine personal passion and a carefully orchestrated propaganda spectacle, elaborate horseback riding expeditions that blur the line between private recreation and public mythology. Private horseback riding on sacred mountains. This isn't simply leisure riding. These carefully documented journeys on pristine white stallions through snow-covered sacred terrain represent a complex fusion of personal escape, political theater, and dynastic legitimacy. The symbolic weight of Mount Paektu cannot be overstated in North Korean ideology. This 750-meter peak, straddling the border with China, serves as the mythical birthplace of the Korean nation and the alleged site of Kim Il-sung's anti-Japanese guerrilla campaigns. More importantly for dynastic propaganda, it's promoted as the birthplace of Kim Jong-il, though historians place his actual birth in the Soviet Union. For Kim Jong-un, riding horseback across this sacred landscape represents a literal journey through family mythology and national identity. The most documented and politically significant ride occurred in October 2019, when North Korean state media released carefully staged images of Kim mounted on a white horse, traversing snow-covered peaks. The photography was nothing short of cinematic, a fur-trimmed leader on a pristine stallion against a backdrop of untouched wilderness, creating imagery that deliberately evoked both Korean mythology and contemporary action cinema aesthetics. But the timing of these rides reveals their deeper political significance. The October 2019 expedition came immediately after failed diplomatic talks with the United States in Sweden and preceded North Korea's resumption of ballistic missile testing. State media described it as a great event of weighty importance in the history of the Korean Revolution and promised a great operation to strike the world with wonder, language that typically precedes major policy announcements or military demonstrations. A second horseback expedition in December 2019, this time accompanied by his wife, Ri Sol-ju, on a separate mount, further emphasized the personal and political dimensions of this activity. The couple was photographed traversing knee-deep snow, released during intense nuclear deadline pressures with the United States, suggesting that these sacred mountain journeys serve as both personal refuge and political messaging. The equestrian aspect adds layers of cultural and psychological significance. Kim Jong-un maintains stables of imported horses, including valuable Russian Orlov trotters gifted by Vladimir Putin in 2019, valued between $75,000, $100,000 each. This represents not just luxury consumption, but a connection to traditional concepts of leadership and nobility that transcend modern political structures. The Swiss education connection provides important context for understanding this hobby's personal dimensions. During his years in European schools, Kim Jong-un was exposed to outdoor recreational activities, including skiing and horseback riding, experiences that represented freedom and normalcy unavailable in North Korea's oppressive political environment. The mountain rides may represent an attempt to recreate those feelings of liberation and authentic experience within the confines of his current reality. For our final entry lies perhaps the most scandalous and morally complex of Kim Jong-un's secret indulgences, elaborate alcohol-fueled party marathons that transform the isolated halls of power into scenes that would rival the most decadent gatherings of history's most notorious rulers. Indulging in lavish all-night secret parties. These aren't merely social events, they represent carefully orchestrated spectacles of absolute privilege that can last entire nights and cost millions of dollars, featuring entertainment that would be unimaginable to the vast majority of his impoverished population. The foundation for these extravagant gatherings was established by his father, Kim Jong-il, who was infamous for marathon party sessions that could extend until dawn. Kim Jong-il reportedly believed that sexual encounters with young women would extend his life, a belief that appears to have influenced his son's approach to elite entertainment. The centerpiece of these gatherings is the notorious Pleasure Squad, or Kipomjo, groups of carefully selected young women who provide dancing, massages, and other services for the supreme leader and his inner circle. Intelligence reports and defector testimonies describe these events taking place in luxurious venues, including Kim Jong-un's Pyongyang palaces, Wonsan coastal resorts, and private islands that have been dubbed North Korea's Ibiza. These locations feature amenities that defy imagination: 200-foot swimming pools, multiple yachts, water slides, theme park rides, and entertainment facilities that cost more to maintain than entire North Korean cities receive in annual budget allocations. The Pleasure Squad represents perhaps the most disturbing aspect of these gatherings. Defector accounts, including testimony from Yeonmi Park, describe a system where Kim Jong-un allegedly selects 25 virgin girls annually, prioritizing beauty, loyalty, and family background. The recruitment process involves medical examinations to verify virginity and extensive background checks to ensure political reliability, creating a systematized approach to what amounts to state-sanctioned exploitation. Former squad member Mi Hyang, who defected and provided detailed testimony, described being recruited at age 15 and spending years in service that included entertainment duties during alcohol-fueled nights that could extend for many hours. These women signed secrecy agreements and received compensation upon retirement, including cash payments of up to $4,000 and luxury appliances, amounts that represent fortunes in North Korean terms, but pale in comparison to the overall costs of these gatherings. The scale and sophistication of these parties reveal complex logistics that span multiple industries. Premium alcohol imports alone cost millions annually, featuring collections of Hennessy cognac, aged Scotch whiskey, and rare wines that are smuggled through the same criminal networks used to acquire nuclear technology and weapons components. The venues themselves require constant maintenance by imported specialists, while the entertainment requires coordination between multiple state agencies to ensure secrecy and security. A rare public glimpse into the sophistication of these events came through 2023 state television footage of a Navy banquet at a Pyongyang resort, showing lavish food spreads, elaborate toasts, and carefully choreographed performances. However, this represents only a sanitized version of what defectors describe as far more extensive and problematic private gatherings that occur away from any documentation or oversight. Recent reports from 2025 suggest these activities continue, with party plenum meetings held in remote mountain locations that may serve dual purposes as both political meetings and private entertainment venues. The psychological drivers behind these gatherings appear to stem from the profound isolation that absolute power creates, transforming entertainment into a form of emotional medication for someone who cannot experience normal human relationships or genuine social interaction. If you enjoyed this video, check out our other awesome videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.